Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Hazy Flame Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile. I don't think I've ever actually done a Hazy Flame deck on the channel before. If I have, it definitely has been a while, but I wanted to update one. Usually I wait till the latest ban lists before, just uploading a bunch of interesting and strange support decks. And since the December 2021 came around, there wasn't anything obviously that was going to come off the list that would benefit this deck, but still I wanted to finally make a Hazy Flame deck. For those of you who don't know, this was a deck that was released during the Zexal format that focuses on summoning out a bunch of different level 6 monsters to overlay into some pretty powerful rank 6 monsters, including one of the main Hazy Flame boss monsters. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the Hazy Flame monsters, I wanted to keep it as pure as possible, and a lot of them do have a lot of consistency with one another. But for some of the main Hazy Flames, I'm running 3 Hazy Flame Cerberus. You cannot normal summon this card without tributing it, but its original attack, you basically can normal summon this card. I completely mixed up my words there. You can normal summon this card without tributing, but its original attack becomes 1000. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, which is a pattern that a lot of the different Hazy Flame monsters follow. And also, when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Hazy card from your deck to your hand. So there are a bunch of spells and traps for the Hazy Flame monsters as well. So that search power with this card is definitely important for sure. And it just specifies when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard. So even if it's destroyed by other means and not just your opponent, you have the option to have that search power with this card altogether. So very, very useful for sure, and a definite 3 of in the deck. I also run 3 Hazy Flame Sphinx. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and you can declare 1 card type, monster, spell, or trap. Send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. Then if it was the declared card type, you can special summon 1 fire monster from your hand or graveyard. You can only use this effect of Hazy Flame Sphinx once per turn. So your definite go-to card for basically special summoning out all of your different Hazy Flame monsters to then go into your extra deck plays. All you have to do is guess the card of the top card of your deck, which, with the majority of cards are running, can be pretty difficult, but you have to rely on this consistency for summoning out all of these different cards. And once again, the fact that this card cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects makes it a true powerhouse and just being protected overall by your plays, just like Hazy Flame Cerberus. For one of the last of the pretty powerful 3-ofs, I also run 3 Hazy Flame Hydra. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and you cannot special summon monsters except for fire monsters. And any Xyz monster that was summoned using this card as an Xyz material gains this effect. When this card is Xyz summoned, you can target 1 Hazy Flame monster in your graveyard, attach that target to this card as Xyz material. So with it, you just have an additional option for more and more Xyz material to go on to the monster that you summon out using Hydra. And there is a pretty powerful XYZ monster that can be summoned out using Hazy Flame Hydra, and this card alone with all the other different support we have, because a good amount of the different Hazy Flame monsters all have different types, with Cerberus being a beast, Sphinx being a beast warrior, and Hydra being a dinosaur. For the last of the 3-ofs, I also want to run 3 Hazy Flame Periton. I sadly only have 1 of this card, so I am substituting in 2 Hazy Flame Griffin, which will also be the substitute for the last card I run in the deck as well, just for the fact that Griffin is kind of situational with the extra deck, since if your opponent controls a monster and all monsters on your side of the field and in your graveyard are fire and only fire, you can special summon this card from your hand, and your opponent can't target this card with card effects. It's situational, like I said, unless you want to be limited to an entire fire extra deck. It would be the only situation where I actually run Griffin in the deck, but instead I definitely would want to run 3 Parrington. It cannot be special summoned except by a Hazy Flame monster's effect, and your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and you can send 1 fire monster from your hand to the graveyard and tribute this card. If you do special summon 2 Hazy Flame monsters from your deck, and you can only use this effect of Hazy Flame Parrington once per turn. So this is your go-to setup with getting 2 Hazy Flame monsters on the field most of the time. For that tribute, it's just that much simpler, because then you'll have the target for any of the other Hazy Flame monsters you have for that setup, and then being able to overlay the 2 of them together, but before even overlaying them, using them for their own monster effects as well. For the last of the Hazy Flame monsters, I also want to run 2 Hazy Flame Manticore. Once again, last Griffin filling in for the final spot of the Manticore, but I would want 2 of this card in the deck as well. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and once per turn, during either player's turn, you can send 1 fire monster except this card from your hand or face on your side of the field to the graveyard, and this card cannot be destroyed by card effects this turn. So with this card, it's basically a protection card for this setup, being during either player's turn, being able to send the fire monster and accept this card from your hand or your side of the field of the graveyard, and then having that extra protection for your card. So a true powerhouse in that sense, but I only run 2 of it because it doesn't really help to set up as many of the other plays like Parrington and your all other 3-Fs that we run in the deck already. For some of the non-Hazy Flame support cards, I also run 3 Inferno. With this card, you cannot be normal summoned or set. It must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 1 fire monster from your graveyard. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you inflict 1,500 points of damage to your opponent. Now that, on its own, can be quite scary for sure if you can get this card to destroy an opponent's monster. I like it just for the extendable special summon, especially with a good amount of our extra deck revolving around just, fire-based link monsters. Being able to summon them out, especially for some power boosts to our fire attribute monsters, makes it all the better for sure. But it doesn't take up our normal summon. We're just going into our resources that we have in the graveyard, being our fire-type monsters, which take up the entire main deck for our go-to typing in the deck. And then lastly, for the monsters in the main deck, I also run 2 True King, the Vanisher. If this card is in your hand, you can destroy 2 other monsters in your hand and or face up on your side of the field, including a fire monster. And if you do special summon this card, and if you do, you can banish 1 monster from your opponent's field or graveyard. If both the destroyed monsters were fire, if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can add 1 non-fire worm monster from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use this effect of True King, I believe his name is Agni Mazud, the Vanisher, once per turn. More setup, and the destruction effect works very, very well for your go-to Hazy Flame monsters having just more and more search power, like Hazy Flame Cerberus, for sure, with this special summon. And the summon for your fire monsters will obviously most of the time both be fire monsters, so you can just benefit more and more from this card altogether. It's just an added backup boss monster that I wanted to run in the main deck to focus on those plays as well. And that is it for the monsters. We will now move on to the spells. I run 3 Hazy Pillar. You can normal summon Hazy Flame monsters for 1 less tribute, which means you can basically just normal summon the monster out onto the field. And once per turn, you can target 1 face-up XYZ monster you control and attach 1 Hazy Flame monster from your hand or your side of the field to that XYZ monster as Xyz material. So with this, Hazy Flame Basil Trice is our main go-to XYZ monster most of the time in the deck. So the more XYZ material you have in this card, the more additional monster effects this card will gain. So being able to rely on Hazy Pillar for this, and the fact that it's just that much easier to then normal summon your Hazy Flame monsters out onto the field, is the big bonus with this card. So you definitely want to run 3 of this card. It will definitely be the target that your opponent will try to destroy most of the time, taking away your summons, but with it, you always have the backup ones to go into as well, and have no fear of your opponent getting rid of your resources. And I also run 3 Celestial Observatory. With this, you place 1 level 6 monster from your hand or face up on the field on the bottom of your deck and draw 2 cards. You can only activate 1 Celestial Observatory per turn. So the majority of the monsters in our main deck are level 6 monsters. So if you have, let's say 2 of the same, or you're trying to draw into some of your important spell cards, the fact that Celestial Observatory places the card on the bottom of the deck means that the card you're placing, obviously you won't see with your draw, make it that much better for sure. So just having 3 of these to go into means you'll always have that consistency to hopefully draw into some more important cards that we run in the deck to set up a lot of different plays you run as well. And for more special summon consistency, I also run 2 Circle of the Fire King. You target 1 fire monster you control and 1 fire monster in your graveyard. Destroy that monster you control, and if you do, special summon 1 other monster from your graveyard, basically with that target. So you'll have recycle power with your different Hazy Flame monsters, being able to summon 1 by destroying another onto the field if you need a specific Hazy Flame compared to the one you have on the field, or if you have that other additional one to go into. It's very, very good also because of the fact that Inferno must first be special summoned, so once it's sent to the graveyard, let's say for your resources, it can be special summoned back onto the field again for you to use. I also run 2 Onslaught of the Fire King. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, special summon 1 Fire Beast, Beast Warrior, or a Wing Beast monster from your deck, but its effects are negated. Also destroy it during the end phase. You can only activate 1 Onslaught of the Fire Kings per turn. So with it, it's more special summon consistency. I even consider dropping either 1 of the Circle of the Fire Kings or 1 of these Celestial Observatories for a 3rd copy of this card, just for the consistency. Sit and says a Beast or Beast Warrior type monster. You can even go for either Hazy Flame Sphinx or your Hazy Flame Cerberus. Having both of the targets for this card definitely makes this card useful, and the fact that its effects are negated doesn't really matter because then you'll have your normal summon to go into using this card and then right into your Xyz play. I also run 2 Rekindling. I thought of also bumping this up to 3, but with the amount of 200 defense monsters we run in the deck that are fire, being Hydra and then Cerberus, once again just like Onslaught of the Fire Kings, we're limited to the special summon with this card. So I found 2 just to be that much better, because then early game if you open up Onslaught of the Fire Kings and then late game Rekindling, it works out much better that way for sure, giving you more and more monsters from the graveyard to summon out and then leaving all your resources early game for Onslaught of the Fire Kings to summon out. And for the one-ofs that I run in the deck, I run 1 Monster Reborn, more graveyard, special summon consistency, no matter what the monster may need to summon out into the field. 1 Call by the Grave, stopping our opponent's graveyard plays as always. 1 Harpy's Feather Duster for back row clearing. You're going to invest a lot in your XYZ play, so being able to clear out your opponent's back row and have no fear of them stopping the summon is a big help for sure. And lastly, 1 Pot of Avarice, just recycling our fire monsters back into the deck, especially so we can have targets for, let's say, late game Onslaught of the Fire King is a big plus for sure. If you wanted to try running 3 copies of Onslaught of the Fire King and not disrupt any of the other numbers for any of our spells, you can even consider taking out 1 Call by the Grave for a 3rd copy of that card also. And that is it for the spells. We'll now move on to the traps. I run 2 Hazy Glory. You can normal summon Hazy Flame monsters for 1 less tribute. So it's basically a backup option to Hazy Pillar on the field. But also you can send this face-up card from the field to the graveyard to target 1 Hazy card in your graveyard except Hazy Glory and add that target to your hand. Or, like I said, if you just have that consistency, or if Hazy Pillar's in your graveyard, being able to send this to add this back to your hand then gives you the option to have this, which is the same card effect, but also giving you the option for attaching XYZ material onto your monsters on the field as well. And then lastly, for the traps, sticking to the continuous trap trend, I also run 3 Gozen Match. Each player can only control 1 attribute of a monster. Send all other face-up ones they control to the graveyard. The majority, and most of the time, we're only going to have fire monsters on the field, which will definitely stop our opponent's plays depending on the deck they are playing. If your opponent doesn't have any different attributes, basically, you can always side this card out for other options. But in this deck especially, it helps and comes in handy because, like I said, our main deck and a good majority of our extra deck are all fire type monsters. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I run 2 Hazy Flame Basilitrice. You need 2 or more level 6 fire type monsters to make this. Once per turn, you can detach 1 XYZ material from this card to target 1 monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. Banish that target. In this card, basically gains effects based on the number of XYZ material attached to it. If it is 3 or more, this card gains 200 attack and defense for each XYZ material attached to it. If it's 4 or more, this card cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects. And if it's 5, this card cannot be destroyed by card effects. It's just a power play, especially with that many XYZ material and the power boost for its attack. It'll be quite difficult to get over this card. Obviously, there's the Kaiju option to tribute it, but that's rarely just seen aside from the side deck options. So like I said, your boss monster to get out on the field. Power boost, and then also for the original Hazy Flame abilities, and just that much easier with cards like Hazy Pillar to attach materials onto this card. I also run 1 Evil Czar Solda. Now this one can only be summoned out because we only have 1 dinosaur in the deck, and that is Hazy Flame Hydra. But when you do, it's that much more powerful because not only is it a fire type monster, so it won't be affected by Gozen Match, but you'll also be able to have the additional attach onto this card using some of our other setup for sure. It's that much scary of a card since it cannot be destroyed by card effects while it has Xyz material, and your opponent, when they special summon a monster, you can detach 1 from this card to destroy that monster. So being able to disrupt their setup is something that Basilitrice cannot do, and this card setup especially will come in handy for that because this will be your go-to offense monster while relying on Basilitrice for its power plays. This is one you'll definitely want to go into a lot more using Hydra. For our other rank 6 monsters, I also run 1 Swordbreaker, 1 Constellar Ptolemy M7, 1 Gauntlet Launcher, and 1 Photon Strike Bouncer. Like I said, they're not fire tribute, so they do conflict with Gozen Match, but most of the time I make them when the card's not set up on the field, but also the one reason why I don't like to run Griffin and why it's just a substitute for cards like Periton and Manticore in the deck. But for the Link monsters, running a good majority of fire monsters for them, I run 1 Heat of the Fire Charmer Ablaze, 1 Doolittle Chimera, 1 Firefighting Darumidol, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Cross Sheep, 1 Barricade Board Blocker, and 1 Nightmare Unicorn to finish off the Link monsters. I don't run any Link 4s. It's hard enough to get a 3 level 6 monsters with the deck out into the field, and most of the time you'll want to invest those into either Vassal Trice or your Solda. So basically going for the Link 4 option can be an option, but it's just player preference at that point as well. As for the go-to plays in the deck, being able to rely on your Parrington is one of the big ones for sure. If you activate your Hazy Pillar for the setup, and then being able to normal summon a Hazy Flame monster for 1 less tribute, you will then summon out your Parrington, and then with this card you can send 1 fire monster from your hand to the graveyard and tribute this card. So with it, depending on which one you send to the graveyard, it can just be more setup in the graveyard for you, especially with your Inferno monsters for the banished. But then after you tribute this card and then gain your special summon with this, you special summon 2 Hazy Flame monsters from your deck, and they don't have to be different names or anything like that. So you can even, depending on the play you want to go for, summon out your 2 Hazy Flame Hydras or 2 of the other Hazy Flames. And if you go for the Hydras, you'll overlay them into your Evil Tsar Solda. So with that play, you'll have the summon of your boss monster out on the field, and then the additional effects of your Hazy Flame Hydras, which when this card is Xyz summoned, you can target 1 Hazy Flame monster in your graveyard and attach that target to it as Xyz material, which both of the Hydras share that play. So then you can target both of those, attaching them onto your Solda, which it needs the, dinosaur monsters for the requirements, but those additional Xyz make it all the better for sure. And then having that set up, you can target 1 face-up XYZ monster you control with this card as well as a once per turn, and then attach that monster to it as Xyz material. So with that, a monster from the hand or your side of the field makes it so if you have the last Hazy Flame in your hand to attach, all the more powerful, because in Evil Tsar Solda, when your opponent special summons a monster, being able to detach 1 Xyz material to destroy that monster, having 5 material on this card and making it that much scarier, because as long as it has the XYZ material, it cannot be destroyed by card effects. You'll be able to stop plenty of your opponent's special summons also. It doesn't negate the summon, it just destroys them. That's a lot of monsters to definitely go through for sure. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. It was definitely an interesting deck to take a look at. I definitely, fell in love with the Evil Tsar Solda play. I would definitely say it's one of the best cards to use in the deck for sure. But until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.